Hello and welcome to Press TV News, coming to you live from Tehran. More civilian casualties at the hands of American forces in Afghanistan. U.S. airstrikes have left dozens of people dead in the east of that country. But the U.S. military denies that civilians were killed in the attacks, claiming they were all militants. Here is more.
U.S. airstrikes have once again left dozens of Afghan civilians dead. One of the attacks hit a district in Kandahar province, killing and injuring dozens of people. The other attack left over a dozen civilians dead, including women and children. It hit a funeral procession in a separate area in the same province. The attacks come only 2 weeks after U.S. warplanes launched a deadly strike against civilians in Afghanistan. Attacks on civilians by U.S.-led troops have long angered Afghans.
Our
demands are for NATO and the Americans to leave our country as soon as possible. We Afghans must come together to choose our path and make the destiny of our country. We must end this deadlock.
Afghanistan's President Hamid+Karzai has repeatedly condemned and called for an end to such strikes.
The disproportionate use of force to a situation and the lack of coordination with the Afghan government is causing these casualties. You don't fight a terrorist by firing a field gun 37 kilometers away into a target.
On this, we are very explicitly clear with our partners in the international community. We cannot tolerate civilian casualties, not even one.
We believe that the war on terror is not in the Afghan villages and homes.
Analysts believe civilian casualties help the Taliban's recruiting drives. This as many of the people who lost their loved ones in U.S. attacks joined the militants. And this results in more and more NATO casualties. It seems that the U.S.-led foreign forces are caught in a catch-22 situation in Afghanistan, as their victory proves to be more elusive than ever.
Meanwhile, the Afghan government has released the findings of an investigation into a deadly rocket attack by U.S.-led forces in Helmand province. Kabul says the inquiry shows 39 civilians, all women or children, were killed in the attack last month. The death toll is fewer than first reported, but dozens more than foreign forces have conceded. A spokesman for NATO has said he has no information about the results of any probe. NATO previously said an initial assessment showed 6 people died in the incident. It added that most of the dead were militants. Also in Afghanistan, the Taliban have claimed that they have shot down a NATO helicopter in southern Kandahar province, killing all on board. NATO, however, says the helicopter has only made an emergency landing due to technical issues. NATO says only 1 soldier has been injured in the incident. Our correspondent in Kabul, Fayez Khorshid, has more.
So far we know that this Canadian helicopter was flying at low altitude over Panjabi district of southern city of Kandahar when it was shot down by the Taliban. Taliban say their fighters fired rockets and small arms to bring it down, and 30 foreign soldiers on board have been killed. But NATO headquarters here in Kabul are telling us that this helicopter made a hard landing in Panjabi district of Kandahar province, and then it took fire. They say only 1 Canadian soldier has been injured. They say this is the findings of their preliminary investigation. And we know that given the facts on the ground and given the security situation in most parts of Afghanistan, NATO helicopters are quite vulnerable to growing Taliban sophisticated attacks, and especially in southern parts of Afghanistan where the Taliban are much stronger. And the reason that made foreign troops here in Afghanistan to rely heavily on their helicopters for moving their troops and supplies from one base to another base are growing roadside bombs that are being planted by the Taliban militants to target NATO convoys in this country. And we see that these growing bombs have inflicted heavy casualties on American and NATO forces, especially this area.
In neighboring Pakistan, floodwaters are spreading to the central and southern areas of the country. More than 1,500 people have lost their lives in the worst floods in nearly a century. The UN says that 4 million people have already been affected in Sindh and Punjab provinces. Ongoing rains and the swollen Indus River have forced over 1 million people to flee their homes. Islamabad says more than 100,000 people have been rescued so far. But victims accuse the authorities of failing to come to their rescue and providing insufficient relief. Waterborne diseases such as cholera are rapidly spreading among the survivors. Let's bring in Press TV's Javed Rana live from Islamabad with more on this. Javed, the provinces of Sindh and Punjab are very populous. The water is moving towards those provinces in the south now. The government, if you recall, came in for a lot of criticism for its weak response to the disaster initially. Do we know of any plans by the government to try and minimize the damage?
Well, they are more trying to further preempt the situation in a situation when the flood is now fast heading towards Pakistan's southern province, Sindh, which is the hometown of Pakistani President Asif Ali Zardari. But so far the situation is on high alert, but the casualty figures are just more around about 55 in Pakistan's Sindh province. It is not very precarious situation, and government claims that they have evacuated tens of thousands of people before the flood could possibly hit them. In Sindh, probably situation is not as bad as we have seen in northwestern Pakhtunkhwa province, and also the situation in Pakistan's other province, the eastern belt, which is also in a way is a southern part of Pakistan. There in Punjab, the biggest losses that have been caused, that is the crops, 1.3 million hectare crops that is now underwater, and this is going to affect the Pakistan's economy hard, because this is the Pakistan's agriculture heartland, the Punjab province. So naturally, this means that Pakistan's import and export are going to be affected in case this flood continues within the next couple of weeks.
And
but
Javed,
apart from that,
I'm sorry, do you think are there any concerns for possible food shortages, Punjab being Pakistan's breadbasket?
Yes, that is what I'm saying, that this is the fault line in a way that in case this flood is not contained in Punjab province, that means 1.3 million hectare farmland. I mean, that's a huge farmland, and the crops are there. They are underwater, and if they stay underwater, particularly Pakistan, if you look at the cotton, Pakistan export cotton, and the cotton crops, if it stays for a longer period underwater, naturally it's going to hit Pakistan's export product. And then also the rice. Pakistan produced one of the best quality of rice in the world, and if the water stays beyond certain period of time, that is also going to affect. And similarly, sugarcane is going to be affected. These are the major crops, and if you see in the northern western frontier province, the situation there is also very precarious, in the sense that the farmland has been affected, and more importantly, there is a life-threatening food shortage in Pakhtunkhwa province, and because of which there is a sort of emergency. The international aid has been very, very limited. Americans have come up with the international aid, but of course they are conscious if Americans don't provide aid at this point of time, then naturally the Americans have concerns, something which has been pointed out by Pakistani ambassador to Washington, then the Taliban could possibly come in between as an alternative source to help out these flood affectees. So in this situation, I think there is also a lot of politics in American aid, but by and large, they have turned out to be the best in terms of providing Pakistan helicopters, in terms of providing Pakistan some sort of boat, and that is turning out to be very helpful, in particularly in the northwestern frontier province, which is bordering with Afghanistan, area where the insurgency is growing up.
And Javed, there is an emergency in the country with the floods affecting the lives of millions of people, while the president is not at home. He is abroad for whatever purpose. What is the talk on the street of what the president has been doing?
Well, a huge disappointment with the Pakistani President Asif Ali Zardari. There were appeals from his allies, there were appeals from the mainstream opposition parties. Don't move to the Britain, don't move to the France in a situation when your country needs you the most. But he has his own political objectives, He has to probably launch his son's political career in Britain, and political commentators are pointing out that he's more interested to be there to launch political career of his son. And then also it was coupled with the geostrategic situation in the region, David Cameron's some sort of adverse remarks on Pakistan's role in so-called war against terror, because of which the political leaders didn't want him to go. Now, since the floodwater is fast reaching to his own home province, I think it is going to be a very tough time for President Zardari. And according to the latest surveys, a Pew Research, which is American survey, they have pointed out that President's popularity in Pakistan is just 20%, the lowest ever. In this situation, I think it will be very difficult for President Zardari to win the next coming elections.
All right, fiddling while Rome burns. Press TV's Jawad Rana in Islamabad. Thank you.